Good day. This is Urban Yeg podcast number 2. I'm Jeff Kelly. Today I sat down to talk with Kim. Kim is the co-founder of Momentum Walk-in Counselling. They are a pay-what-you-can, solutions-based counseling service here in Edmonton. We've had a relationship with them for quite a while, I think since around 2016, 2016 we started our relationship with them. And we've worked with them to help them to raise money for their services so that they can help as many people as they can with any kinds of mental health concerns and counseling. As said on their website, it says, ultimately our goal is to empower you to connect with your strengths and formal and informal supports to transform your life 1 hour at a time. You can expect to leave the session with a lot of tools and community resources. Most importantly, you can expect a sense of validation and hope that things can and will get better. Personally, I have used their services and I found it to be hugely beneficial. And so I hope you enjoy Urban Yeg podcast number 2 with Kim from Momentum Walk-in Counselling Services. Okay, so we're here with Kim from Momentum. Kim is the co-founder for Momentum. Yes. So how long has Momentum been around?
Yeah, we've been around for 6 years now.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Started on White Avenue, but last year we got to move to Center 104, and we really love it there.
Right. I remember when we did our, what was it called? The Urban Yeg, the party that we did. Yeah. What was it called?
For the people, by the people.
For the people, by the people. You were there.
Yeah.
And I remember that you guys were down on White Avenue at the time. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about yourself and why that was something that you felt you wanted to do.
Sure. Yeah. I became a psychologist, obviously, for reasons most of us do, which is really interested in why people are the way they are. And I moved back to Edmonton from Calgary when I got married and started volunteering at an organization called the Support Network. And they had they had a walk-in counseling program. And because of many reasons, but a lack of funding was one of them, that program had to close. And so that happened in 2012. And when that occurred, all of us who were volunteering there as psychologists said, this is really unfortunate that this type of service doesn't exist in Edmonton anymore. We should really do something about it. And so we started up, at the time it was called Walk-in Counselling Society of Edmonton. And we've since rebranded and now we're Momentum. Wow. And we've just grown every year since.
Nice. So You were just a volunteer psychologist at that point?
Yeah.
In 2012, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd been there about 3 years.
Okay, wow. Mm-hmm. So going from that to going into how did the idea of deciding that you were going to found and start because it's a business basically, right? So you're starting a business from scratch. Had you had any experience in doing anything like that before that time?
That's a great question. What would possess somebody to start a nonprofit charity?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of it was just the need we saw in the community. And once you look in people's eyes who have nowhere else to turn, you can't imagine not being there for them. But I had experience in years prior building a playground for my daughter's school. So I was the head of that committee. And it was kind of similar where you had to do a lot of fundraising. You had to get a team together. You had to work with 3 levels of government to get plans done and grants written. And it was a really good jumping off point to getting to know the community and how funding works. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to secure a space, and we really already had a business plan because we already had been doing this type of program. So when we opened our doors in June of 2013, we literally hit the ground running, and we had people lined up out the door to come and receive services. So that part though was hard because we were starting a brand new business, and to start so quickly and with such, favor from the community added some extra pressures to be able to manage the numbers.
For sure. And but that's like, I don't know, it's a good thing that people were there to like for you guys to help them out. Like they were already there just waiting for you to do this thing.
Yeah.
Like in terms of, I guess like you didn't have to like market yourself very much. You didn't have to, it didn't take you a long time to start getting clients, right? They were already there, but at the same time, it's kind of not necessarily the best thing that there are so many people waiting for this service, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just tells you what the need is in our community. I think definitely the government is working on it. Community organizations are working on this problem. We know it's a really difficult system to navigate, but there just simply isn't enough for the need, enough services. So, yeah, it was interesting because we haven't done a ton of marketing, but yeah, people find us and mostly through Google searches. So thank goodness for the internet.
I see. Do you think like, cause you're a psychologist, right? And you work with other psychologists, right? I assume that you're probably pretty well known within that sphere of like the network of psychologists. So if there's somebody who's looking for help, and is able to like maybe talk to a psychologist, like I know I went through the governmental system, I guess, like the provincial system. I was
like Alberta Health Services.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm not even sure how I ended up there, but I was at the 108th Street building and I went in there and I talked to somebody. There was almost like a triage type of thing, right? Where they're like, okay, like fill out this questionnaire.
Intake,
correct. And just see like maybe what's best suited for you before you talk to somebody.
Yeah.
But I know that even just the intake, if you will, like you said, it did take quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was there one day, I filled out that information. I briefly spoke to somebody, and I think it was almost a month. I think it was like 3 weeks, a month before I actually sat down with somebody for an actual session, right?
Yeah.
So do you think like within, like I guess like the community of psychologists, and if people know who you are, do you think they have the ability to like refer your services to them in that system?
Well, there's a few issues with our system, and you've highlighted one of them, which is if you need services through government services, there's a huge backlog and wait. I've even heard of people calling the intake line because you don't have to go in person. You can call intake, but waiting 3 weeks to get a call back. Not an appointment, another 6 to 8 weeks for an appointment. And, a lot can change in that time. And sometimes things get much worse, right? And so that's really difficult. Another issue and barrier for people is that psychologists cost a lot of money,
right?
Or $200 an hour.
Yeah.
And if you don't have insurance or the means to pay up front, then that's a barrier for you. There's a lot of community organizations that can offer sliding scale, but then you have to show proof of income. Well, what if you don't have that?
Right.
So there's just so many hoops to jump through in the system, and maybe they don't have the right type of service for you.
Right.
So that's why walk-in for us was so important, because we can deal with any issue, and people can get help right away. And if they need specific services, we can really help them find what that is and how to get into it.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was unemployed at the time, right? I didn't have the money to pay $200 an hour for a psychologist, like just to talk to somebody and just work through like thought processes and things. Even just a couple of sessions of being able to have somebody like mirror to me is hugely beneficial, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was like one of the first things that I noticed about going into that process. Why do you think it is so slow? Like, why do you think there is such a backlog of people on waiting lists and things like that? What's happening there, do you think?
Well, I think a good question is, what can we do about it?
That's
the system is what it is.
Right.
The government is what it is. But what can we do about it? And I think that people making their voices known through their voting and what issues are important to them are really important, because every government has a different priority.
Sure. And
you have to make sure that mental health and wellness is a priority for our government,
right.
Especially with an election coming up.
That's right.
And so that's huge. I think it is difficult public health care is difficult to be nimble and responsive sometimes, but I do think they're trying. I'm working with a number of committees that are, including Alberta Health Services, who is trying to just make this system a lot more navigatable.
Right.
So, for instance, there's an organization or a group that's starting Access 24/7. So it's an AHS program, and it's at Anderson Hall, which is at the Royal Alex. And so it's supposed to be opening up in the next few months, but it's a walk-in triage type system where instead of your experience where you had to go in and fill out paperwork and wait, they're hoping to really streamline that.
I see.
So that's where their call center will be. You can talk to somebody right away. They have doctors and pharmacists and peer support navigators all on site at the time. And then they can do all of that triage right there.
I see.
So, I mean, that's if you can access services downtown.
Right.
We're on the south side, so I have a feeling that we're not going to have a big impact to our clientele, but we do need more of that. And so we just hope that in the future, our government will continue to prioritize mental health and make these systems way easier to navigate.
Right. Yeah, I think, honestly, like in my experience, I dealt with a lot of depression, anxiety, things like that, which I think is so common nowadays with like, I don't know, social media and just, I don't know, things being so fast nowadays and feeling kind of like this pressure to keep up with people, things like that.
Yeah.
And I just had a lot of things happen in my life. And before I went through that experience, honestly, I didn't completely understand. I didn't have the experience. I didn't completely understand what things are like in terms of mental health in this country. But I also didn't completely understand exactly, even to a small degree, I didn't really understand what other people are going through, right? Yeah. Until I found myself in that position. It was pretty much just like, okay, well, you feel sad, so just do something that makes you feel more happy, I guess. You know what I mean?
People don't understand.
I didn't quite understand it. And it seemed very, very peculiar to me when I was in that position to be like, I feel bad, but I don't exactly know why I feel bad. So I don't exactly know what to do to change that. Yeah. And I don't really care to change that.
So how did you get yourself to 108th Street? Like, did you have a family or a friend suggest, or did you just make that decision?
Yeah. I was actually, to be honest, I was actually self-medicating with cannabis quite a bit. I had lost my job and everything, so I was unemployed. And I realized, I got to a point where I realized that what I was doing was something I was doing to myself, and that I couldn't just fix that or change that myself. I had gotten to a place where I needed some help. And it was, but I can't remember exactly how I found myself there. You know what it was? I went to a doctor. I just went to a walk-in clinic. And actually that person prescribed me medication like right away.
Right.
Like, I was in the office for a very short period of time with this doctor, and I was prescribed medication right away. Yeah. But, then I was referred to the mental health services through Alberta Health Services at the 108th Street building. And from there, it did take a while, but I did get to speak with somebody pretty consistently.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
Like I said, almost a month between sessions. But also, I was also doing cognitive behavioral therapy and group therapy and things like that. And I thought that really helped me as well, especially CBD. Yeah. Or CBT, rather. CBD.
Well, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, we'll talk about it another time.
But yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, so that's how I got there. But I had no idea. Like you said, like when I was going through that period of time, that was the end of 2012, the beginning of 2013. Yeah. And I didn't know that services like that even existed, right?
Well, and what's interesting is 40% of doctors' patients are for mental health concerns.
Is that right?
Now, that's a really high number when you consider that, doctors in most cases take care of our physical health, right? Yeah. And so they can certainly help with the mental health aspect in terms of prescriptions if necessary, but and definitely ruling out any underlying causes is really important. And so I always suggest people make sure they get their yearly physicals just to make sure there's no thyroid or like any other issues happening to make things worse. But, that's really a misuse of services too. If we're thinking of 40% of their patients are for mental health,
Right.
well, is there a better way to use our healthcare dollars and maybe have something that's more effective for people?
Right.
Like maybe if you getting in touch with a therapist first and then determining if you need medication might be a better use of your time and energy and tax dollars, right? So, I think it's just really important we keep that conversation going so that we can help the government make really good decisions, but then also help our friends and family make good decisions about what to do about their own health and wellness. Right. I think so often you're 100% right where people don't understand it themselves. And so if they don't have the knowledge to kind of not even self-diagnose, but even recognize the signs that they're not doing okay, then it's hard to go get help. But if you start to recognize the signs that, oh, you know what, I'm not the same as I used to be and I want to be different, then, what do you do about it? Well, you go see a therapist,
right.
And this just hopefully at some point becomes a normal part of life.
Correct. Yeah.
It's like going to get your oil changed.
That's right. It's maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Like how I think, for me, it was just a slow kind of gradual decline that I didn't really notice it.
Yeah.
Like from day to day, it'd be like, okay, I kind of feel bummed out.
Yeah.
But I don't feel much different than I did like yesterday or last week. It wasn't something that
not like a significant difference.
Like something that just showed up and just boom. And then I'm in this place that I'm like, how the hell did I get here? It was more like a gradual, like,
it's barely noticeable kind of.
Correct. Yeah. And then eventually I got to a point where I was like, how did I even, and with such like, stigmatism surrounding that and feeling like, okay, well, cause I was in the military for, like part-time as a reservist for nearly 8 years. Right. Yeah. And it was super, cause like I was going through some of this when I was in the army and it was super difficult to go to my superiors in the military and be like, listen, I need to take some time off. Like I'm dealing with some stuff and I had to write a memo formally doing this. And it was really difficult to do that. And I felt super, like I just felt like, I'm weak. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm
like there's something wrong with you
I'm broken.
Yeah. That you're not able to handle it or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's super common, especially in that field. But I mean, it's common in our society, unfortunately. Right. And I think it's getting better over the last few years. But, I think starting these types of conversations really helps normalize this for people, that actually everyone goes through ups and downs. And I have a hard time with the statistics sometimes that say 1 in 5 people will experience mental illness. Like, you know what? I think it's normal for people at certain times of life to have depression or anxiety. Like that's just a normal part of life.
Right.
I think what we need to talk about more is not who has it and when, but what do we do about it when you get it? Because it's most likely going to happen to you because life is full of ups and downs. That's the nature of the beast, right? And so the point is, what do you do about it? And then if it starts to spiral out of control, how to recognize that too, because that's what happens for some people, right? And so, this is a really important conversation.
Right.
And then it's okay because everyone goes through it.
For sure. Yeah. Like, I didn't really know anybody who had gone through this kind of thing.
You don't think you know anyone. You probably do.
But that's the thing, right? We didn't like talk about it. They don't talk about it, right? Everybody just like kind of like, that's the thing that you kind of just like brush under the rug and it doesn't come up in common conversation because it's kind of like taboo or just, it's weird.
Well, it's interesting because genetics play a huge role in our mental health. And And a lot of families don't talk about it. But when sometimes you go through things, you look back at family members and then you say, hey, didn't Aunt Judy have something going on? And didn't my cousin kind of disappear for a while? And, you start to kind of look back and say, oh, that could actually be explained by depression or anxiety or, maybe even some other mental health issues, right? And it's really interesting, I think, as our awareness goes up and the stigma comes down, that we're actually able to have these open and honest conversation even within our families about, mental wellness and how things have not always been good in our families,
right?
And really how to manage it.
Yeah, yeah, it's super common. It seems very, very strange to me that we all kind of like, well, not most of us, I guess, like the majority of the population, I suppose, go through life with this outward relationship with people, and there's always this stuff kind of like behind that's really something that if we were able to become more okay with ourselves in that, then we could really connect with a lot more people in that. You know what I mean?
So it's like a more authentic kind of relationship.
Right. Because it's not just, I'm not just always trying to show you my good side. I mean, if we're friends and we're like really close friends, then we can get to the point where it's like, hey, look, I had these sorts of feelings about this. And you're like, oh, you know what? I actually had a similar experience. It's like, okay, now I feel that I'm not alone in that.
Yeah.
Whereas, it takes us to like really deepen our relationships with people to even feel comfortable getting there. And even some people like might not even go there. And I think that's like, people are kind of like missing a dimension to their lives. And that in and of itself causes some of that pain, right?
Well, the biggest factor in our wellness is social relationships. And so if we're not able to connect with people because of a fear of not being worthy of love and belonging, then that really impacts our mental wellness and how we're able to connect with people. And so we absolutely need to start having these conversations and, with our friends and our family members about really how we're doing, and being able to ask others how they're doing too, right? And making the time and space for that.
So I know like my experience was not really unique. I mean, the circumstances of my experience were unique, but I suppose like how I felt and how I dealt with that experience is not really that unique. However, I will say that like going through that experience did allow me to get to a point where I could see things that I didn't necessarily see before, like problems that were there, like things that I was thinking or just things that I accepted about myself that weren't necessarily the truth. Like I said, like cognitive behavioral therapy really helped me to see my thought patterns a lot of the time. But without that, and if I didn't go kind of like where I went, I don't think I would have dealt with those things because it's not really something that is like just a part of our lives, like a part of our living. Like it's not something you learn in school. You go through school to learn all of these different things, and you don't even understand in like high school how your brain works.
Yeah. And I think that's changing. Fortunately, I have 2 girls in elementary school, and it's surprising how the conversation is changing because I think the education system realizes that while they need to teach you math and language arts, that more and more students are struggling, and it's just a necessary part of the curriculum now to add in, healthy relationships and talking about emotions and problem solving within relationships, right? And I'm really glad to see that that's changing. I'm a generation before you as well, and let me tell you, a lot has changed for the better. And people ask me all the time, like, are there more issues with mental health and wellness now than there used to be? Or are we just talking about it more? And I think it's both, really. Like, I think there are more. I think there's a lot of societal things that have changed that have caused us to be disconnected. But I also feel like, just our ability to talk about it just raises the awareness. And now we're actually identifying, like, really, if I think I think if we were having honest conversations, that I think it would be 1 in 2 Canadians will experience mental health issue, or maybe even 1 in 1, right?
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
I really think that a lot of us have moments and periods of time where things are tough. The thing that I want to see happen more is talking more about healthy coping, because we all go through stress. And I think we're more stressed out today than we have been in a long time.
Right.
And for various reasons. But, that's something I think this young generation, and we're talking to them more about too, is how do you cope when you're going through the ups and downs? How do you have good conversations? How do you have good relationships, not just online? And I think the pendulum is starting to swing back, where they say that, young people only communicate through text and don't have face-to-face conversations.
Sure.
I think that's swinging back, where there's a realization that face-to-face interactions are important, and that togetherness and coming together as a community is important. And we're rediscovering that that needs to be a priority for all of us in our wellness, and inclusivity and all that. But also mindfulness and meditation, right? And living in the moment, and how to take care of your body and your soul and your spirit, and not just, defining yourself by your success and your wealth. So I think there's just so many great conversations that are opening up about the truly well-rounded person. And Brene Brown would call it the wholehearted lifestyle, where we're really living our best lives because we're in tune and we're present.
Yeah. Do you think, because my life has been very, very strange. Like, I've gone, a lot of different things have happened, and I've only just within, I guess, the last 5 or 6 years, like after coming out of that phase of like deep depression and all of that sort of thing, had I become just more aware of what you're talking about like taking care of yourself better, and just like becoming more aware of, I guess, like the spiritual aspect of my existence, I suppose, like, because that's not nothing, but at a time, to me, that's just, it's just woo woo. You know what I mean? That's just like, what are you even talking about?
And yet it's a huge component of our existence, right? And our fulfillment is our spiritual fulfillment.
Right.
And it could be religion, and it doesn't have to be, right?
Of course. But it's interesting how that is something that is becoming more of, I guess, like a socially acknowledged thing that we have to be aware of. But it's I don't know, it's kind of weird, because it's almost like we're relearning that stuff, because it's like, okay, well, I've sorted out, like, my schedule and my routine and my job, and I managed like my house and my car and all of these things, and now I have this other thing that I have to like be aware of and deal with. But I found that through my own experience, it's like, if you focus on that sort of thing, like your mental awareness in the moment, then a lot of those other things kind of just become easier. Like you're talking about like healthy coping, those things just become less of a problem, because if I'm super stressed out, then I'm not able to be the gatekeeper of my mind in terms of regulating my thought patterns. And I start thinking about things that are like negative, and I start telling myself things that are not true. And so, that has to kind of come first, and then all that other stuff kind of just irons out on its own. But a lot of people, like, I mean, it's hard to say a lot of people, but like people I know, I suppose, and like maybe older generations, I suppose, that's backwards. So what do you think has changed in terms of being able to, like, people to have the awareness to, like, kind of like now try to shift that in terms of what you're talking about? Is, you said your daughters are being taught a lot about life, I guess, like being a human being and dealing with having a brain in school. Like, that's something that 20 years ago probably was not, like, when I was in school, that was definitely not happening. So
Well, there's a whole bunch to be said about the generational thing, and I'll talk about that maybe in a second. I think what's really important, kind of along the lines of what you were just talking about, to address too, is like the research is showing so much right now that sleep deprivation is really our number one factor in mental health and wellness and physical health and wellness. So, absolutely, we don't have the right brain chemistry when we're sleep deprived. Our body's metabolisms change when we're sleep deprived. We have less coping when we're sleep deprived. I mean, it is such an epidemic issue. And I can't tell you how many clients come in and say, oh, I'm fine on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. Yeah. You're not. Yeah. Biologically, you're not. Like 7 to 7.5 hours, 7 to 8 even. For myself, it's more like 9. It's super important. And if you're waking up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, that's a problem. Like all of these things are huge issues. And I don't think as a generation, we realize the mind-body connection. Right. And that's really, I feel like what I'm teaching a lot of people is you drink caffeine all day long and don't eat food, you're going to feel anxious. Yeah. That's what caffeine makes your body feel. You have to fuel yourself properly. You have to hydrate yourself properly. But we're really good at, looking at ways of numbing feelings with food, with technology, with avoiding. And it's great for coping, like use these things every once in a while. But if that's how you're living your life is by numbing, then it's a problem, right? And you don't get to heal what you don't feel, unfortunately. So number one, I always recommend to our clients, make sure you're eating and hydrating, but then also check out your sleep routine and address that. And I bet you will find that a number of your issues start to decrease rapidly. So it's really important, but we're not taking it seriously.
That's very interesting, though. It's interesting you mentioned that because was it I think a month ago or so, I started to feel kind of crummy. And I felt like I was actually starting to distract myself and avoid the things that I know I should be doing because I felt bad, and I started to see these things pop up. And I was talking to my girlfriend and she was like, yeah, how are you sleeping? And I was like, probably not the best. And then, I started to shift that and it helped. It was difficult, but
it's enormously difficult. Yes.
Getting into a sleep routine and make that habitual, it was kind of difficult because I guess I was used to staying up later. And that helped a lot, but also I was like, okay, well, maybe I should talk to somebody, right? Yeah. I mean, not because I'm in a place where I'm doing so bad that I need a ton of help, but it's like you were talking about, it's a more of a maintenance, a course correction, something like that. So I was talking to my girlfriend. She's like, okay, well, maybe you should go and speak to somebody. And the only people that I knew I could go and talk to, because I was unemployed at the time, right? I'm not in a place where I'm making a whole ton of money. So I went to Momentum and I actually went in and went through the service there.
That's great.
Yeah. And it was very interesting. It was very interesting. I really actually got a ton of value out of it because what had happened was what was happening was it was more focused on solutions. It was more focused on, okay, what's the issue right now? What can we do about it? When you leave here, what is some actions that you can take that will help you move towards where you want to go? Where are you right now? Where do you want to go? How can we get there? Kind of thing. It's like drawing a map. Yeah. And I would start when I was in the session, I would start kind of going off topic and going way down here and going okay, well, this is probably because of this. And I think maybe
the history.
Correct. And then she was like, no, that's okay. That's fine. But it's you're at where you're at now, and we can only do something from here. So let's just kind of like work on this.
Yeah.
Right.
Understanding the problem can be helpful as to why things are the way they are. But we do something that's fairly unique, and that's called solution-focused therapy. And so what that means is that when you come in, for us to help you, we don't need to know a ton about the problem. We just need to know what you want. What do you want that's going to be different? What are your goals? Why are you here today and not yesterday or 2 days from now? Like, what is it about this moment that makes you want to make changes? And what are those changes that you want to see in your life? And that's what we help you work towards. And so it's really efficient in terms of your time and your energy and your money, because we can help you move forward really quickly. And it's interesting because people ask me all the time, like, how can you help someone in one session? And, that's the case about a third of the time that we do, and people don't need to come back for any further help. And we just say, you know what? The research says, and this is widely accepted, that the most important factor for people to make changes in therapy is the relationship with the therapist. It's not actually the type of therapy that you do. And there's a lot of really good therapies, but what's actually most important is that you connect with your therapist. And that's what we're really good at doing. And then, so we use solution-focused therapy because we find it super effective for people. And people make change really quickly. So I ended up, because I was at the office yesterday seeing a client, and he was really distressed. And, a lot of my staff was a little perplexed. Like, what do we do to help this guy? He seems like really in a state. And, I just followed the method that we use, and it was amazing. Within 60 minutes, 65 minutes, like, things were looking good. And in honest feedback form, even, I was so impressed. He's like, wow, I really made a lot of changes today that I didn't even think were possible. And that's, every time I see something like that, makes it all worth it for me, because that's the point. You're coming to get help. You're not coming to do 2 intake sessions and wait on a wait list. And you need help right now and before it gets worse.
Right. Yeah, that's excellent. And it definitely helped me. I definitely walked out of it. Like, honestly, going in, I was like, I was kind of expecting the kind of thing that I had dealt with before, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I started going on telling my whole life story and everything, because I'm like,
because that's what you've been asked before.
Correct. Yeah. Like, you're going to need all this stuff. So I have all this stuff like ready, and I'm just unloading it here because that's what I believe that you need to tell me then what I should be doing. Whereas no, it was definitely more of a conversation, and I definitely learned things about myself in that conversation that I wasn't necessarily paying attention to. It was like, what did I want? Yeah. What's important to me? What do I value? Is what I'm doing in line with my values? Yeah. Because for me, it's like, my feeling of self-worth, that was the problem that I was dealing with. I was like not feeling like worthy of whatever. And so for me, I tend to derive my value out of like my self-worth out of if I'm doing things that are in line with my values. Right. And if I'm avoiding and distracting myself from those things, well, then I don't feel good because I'm not living up to my own standards.
But sometimes it's not conscious.
Correct.
Right? It's subconscious. And so then until you have a conversation about it, you don't even realize you're not living in alignment with your values. Sometimes you don't even know what your values are until someone actually asks you, right?
See?
So then...
That was the thing though, because it was like, I went in there and I was like, I want to feel a better sense of self-worth. And then the therapist was like, so what does self-worth even mean to you? And I was like,
oh, wait a second.
I don't think I've truly defined that. I don't think I've truly really like,
Yeah, like what does that mean to you?
Some abstraction that I've had, I guess, feeling good, I guess, but it's more than that. It's honestly like living in alignment to my values and striving towards the things that I believe I can achieve, kind of thing. Yeah. And part of that is, part of me being able to do that is taking care of myself in terms of sleeping well and things like that. Yeah. So it was like, okay, well, here are some things that you can do. Like focus on your sleeping, take care of things when they need to be taken care of, and start slow. And then, and yeah, that really helped, because it did kind of make me feel like I was working towards something more tangible than just, like an abstract idea. Yeah. That I was like, okay, that's a nice to have, but I don't even know, like, that's not even a real thing to me.
Like, how does one get there?
Right.
Exactly. Well, and I think what's so interesting is that I think a lot of people think there's like some magic to it. And sure, for my, longevity as a profession, sure, let's say it's magical, but there really isn't. A lot of times, what it takes is small steps every day. So for instance, like changing your sleep pattern. This is something I had to work on in the last couple of years, and it's literally taken me a few years, and it's not even perfect yet. Wow. But what you do is, because I knew I needed to make a change, so I'd kind of one night here and there say, oh yeah, I need to make sure this is different. But it wasn't like a consistent thing until it wasn't getting better. And then I realized, oh yeah, I need to actually really focus on this and really start trying a number of different things. And I think a huge issue right now is technology. So I know a lot of people who keep their phones in their bedrooms. Or even under their pillows, and don't turn off their notifications and things, and I can't even imagine how people can function like that. I couldn't. But a big thing for me was getting technology out of the bedroom, and I had no idea that I'd have such a reaction to it. But I, honest to God, feel like it was an addiction, where watching a show or playing a game before bed, the thought of not doing that took me almost a year and a half to get it out of my room slowly. And I had to make a concerted effort. So like, there's no question, like, these are addictive devices. Sure. But I was able to replace it with reading a book, which I used to do all the time. But there was that anxiety about not having it near me. And it was shocking to me that was even a thing. That's interesting. But it just know for people that this isn't something that, like, you don't make grand changes overnight. You make small changes every day. Yeah. And that's what gets you towards your goals. But I think people think it's not happening fast enough, and they stop. That's right. But it's not supposed to happen fast. It's supposed to be small so that you keep those changes.
Yeah. You got to be realistic, because it took like probably months and years to develop habits like that. And you basically have to like retrain your neural pathways to fire in a different way.
There's no question.
And let that stuff kind of like go. And you would have like withdrawal symptoms kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And relapse. Oh, trust me, there's relapse that happens. But again, I don't beat myself up over it. Sure. I just make a conscious effort to do it differently the next day, right?
Right. Yeah. See, I used to smoke cigarettes, and so I definitely understand that process. And it was hard for me to, I guess it's always kind of been difficult for me going through anything where I want to make a change like that, where it is something that is difficult and takes a long time, to not feel like I'm a complete and utter failure if I am not doing it fast enough, in my opinion. Right. Or if I should like have a relapse or something like that, and be like, oh, I'm destined to just deal with this my entire life kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think it's normal for us to think that we're just going to do it and it won't be a problem anymore. And this is what I talk to clients about all the time. I said, okay, so this isn't always going to go well. This is a major life change you're trying to make. There's going to be times when it's not going to go well. So how are you going to plan for that?
That's right. Yeah. Being realistic about your expectations. Yeah. And I guess, my standards tend to be too high. And I think like the military had something probably to do with that. Like, failure is not an option kind of thing, right? And then, failure is actually inevitability.
It is.
It's an inevitability. Absolutely. So if it's not an option and it inevitably occurs, well, then how do you reconcile that kind of thing, right?
Well, and there's something interesting about failure. And this is kind of what I was thinking about when you were talking about your awakening / breakdown was was that, these are really opportunities for us to learn and grow. Until we're faced with challenges, we don't really give ourselves the opportunity to change things up. When things are fine, we leave it because change can be difficult, but it's so worth it when, again, like you say, you're working towards things that are more in alignment with your values or are good for your health, make you feel better in the long run. These are all really good things to do. But it takes failure. It takes difficult moments for us to really seize those opportunities. So right. I actually kind of like that.
Yeah.
I really like failure / challenges because it's like, okay, growth opportunity. It really sucks at the moment, but oh my God, am I going to learn a lot?
Correct. But you gotta go through that experience.
Yeah.
And you kind of need some, you might need some kind of coaching or assistance
100%, yes.
as to how to navigate that place without beating yourself up for it, because like you said, it is hugely a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
And going through that, like I said, for myself, it was life changing. Yeah. It was terrible. Like all kinds of things that occurred in my life where just things crashed down kind of thing. Right. But, I wouldn't be in the place that I'm at now, which I really enjoy, and I feel a lot better about my life if that had not occurred.
Well, and interestingly, when we have those breakdowns and crashes, is sometimes we're getting rid of things that aren't serving us in our lives, right? And you would have never gotten rid of those things had this not happened.
That's true.
So then you're able to rebuild more in alignment with what you want. And so the loss is always difficult at first,
right? But
I always try and remember, there's probably a reason why this is no longer with me, because it's no longer serving me, or the relationship or the thing or the job or, whatever it happens to be. Clearly there's a different purpose for where we are.
Right. That goes back to what I was saying earlier about how it allowed me to see things I hadn't necessarily seen before.
Yeah.
Right. It allowed me to see decisions I was making or things that I was bringing along with me that I actually self-identified with being me.
Oh, what?
Oh, yeah. Well,
you contributed? Yeah, it's true. I know. It's shocking always.
This thing that I used to think was me.
Yeah.
Is not actually me.
Yeah.
But for years I had thought it was me and I thought I needed it.
Interesting.
And now it's like, oh, well, that's not actually me. I didn't actually decide for myself to incorporate that into my own self.
Yeah.
And I had identified with that. And so I had been holding on to a lot of those things really, really hard and actually becoming upset if they were to be suggested that they weren't me or should be removed or anything like that, until I was in a place where I was really looking at it and be this is not who I am.
Yeah. So you made it a conscious evaluation of the situation.
Yeah. Well, for me, one of those things was the military. Just, for myself, it was the military. It was I didn't actually, I kind of fell into this and I thought it was something I needed to do in order to be enough or whatever. And so I was okay, well, now I don't necessarily, I don't want this to kind of be a part of my life. And I made the decision to leave. And that was hugely difficult, but it really started to open up my ability to look at things differently, look at myself, look at my life. And like you said, consciously evaluate those things because I know the danger of not doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's hugely beneficial. So, well, in that, when I was in the session at Momentum, there was actually two people in the room with me, and the other individual.
They're therapists, yes.
The two,
not just random people, yes, therapists.
Yes, the two therapists that were in the room. I was having a conversation with the one, but the other was in the corner, and she was actually.
She was sitting on a chair, not quite in the corner. Yeah.
She was sitting.
You're making this sound really medieval. So there's you and two therapists sitting in the chairs.
Correct.
Okay.
In a very
all looking at each other nicely.
Yes. Room.
Okay.
It was warm. The chairs were comfortable. Okay. It was very welcoming and inviting.
There we go.
But she was observing what I was saying.
I was the outsider witness.
Correct.
Cool.
And I thought that was super hugely beneficial because she was oh, well, I heard Jeff say these things. Yeah. And I was well, yeah, I guess I did say those things. And it kind of allowed me to to see positive things that I had actually said about myself that I actually honestly believe, but that I don't necessarily acknowledge or give credit to most of the time.
Consciously, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. No, it's when we have time, because we always have a number of therapists on staff, but if we're not busy, we'll do the outsider witness, and which is simply an opportunity for another therapist to come in and just listen to your story while you're talking to your therapist. And then what happens is they have a chance to reflect back to you some of the things you've said and the things that have stood out for them. And it can be hugely powerful for clients. Like, really, this is what you gathered from my story, you know? And I think sometimes we don't always, like, we're very used to thinking that people are thinking bad things about us, but we're not really always that good at realizing that quite often people think good things about us.
Right.
You know, that when they encounter us or hear stories or just hear us speaking, that actually some people really take a lot of value from the things we have to say. And I think we're not great at acknowledging that. So this is an opportunity for people to hear from someone who doesn't know them, the really neat things that they hear about their story and about their strengths and about the good things that they are doing in their lives. Because we tend to really gloss over those things. We focus on negative. That's just kind of a brain misfunction. Sometimes we focus on things that aren't going well, but you know, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's biological, etc. You have to escape things that are going to kill you, but that doesn't serve us in our modern world where there's actually a lot of great things happening. So yeah, we love to do that technique when we have a chance to.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was really cool.
That's neat.
And yeah, I did gain a lot of. It made me feel good.
Yeah, of course.
It was really cool.
That's great.
Yeah. Chan, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
Your
burning questions, Chan. Comments, reflections. So what stands out for you?
I think I had this written down here, but I think you kind of.
Go ahead.
But I think you kind of covered it. My thoughts were just. I'm going to speak from my own experience that I've never seen a therapist. I've never sought a therapist personally.
Sounds like it's time.
Maybe, well, it probably is time, but I'm going to speak on maybe behalf of some of the people who are listening right now who are in my shoes. They're on that cusp, like they're thinking about it. They've never been, but they don't know if they should go, if they need it or not. But maybe some people are opting not to go because they don't know what the process is like. You know, they don't. It's like that thing people fear what they don't know or understand.
Yeah,
so
100%. Well, here's what I feel, because we've done research on this. I think that people's perception of therapy gets in their way of experiencing therapy. Right? So I think through media or whatnot, you think you're going to go sit on a couch, tell people your deepest, darkest secrets, and then they're going to judge you. I think that's what a lot of people think. And that's not hopefully the case. That's not what you found, right, Jeff?
No.
Okay. No lying on the couch, no judging, etc. What we try and do is really work with you to say, you know what, you're the expert in your life. I can't tell you what to do, but I have some questions to help you think about things differently. And then you come up with what you think is going to be ideal for your situation. And I think people don't always understand that that's what needs to happen. And I also think people think it's going to take a long time, that their lives are so complicated that it's going to take forever to explain what's going on, and that you're going to have to go for years. And again, that's not the case. We're really skilled at what we do. We've been doing it a long time. We have education on how to do this. And yeah, we can make great changes with you even in just one session. And the thing we didn't touch on is that at Momentum, you pay what you can afford. Right. And so like there is no barrier. We try to take down every barrier we can think of. Even the other day, I had a gentleman come in who said, you know, it's really hard for us older folks to read this print on this color of paper. And I thought, you know what? There's a barrier I didn't even think of. We need to make the print bigger and change the color of the paper. Like simple things, but, you know, if you're open to listening to what is stopping people from really experiencing this, then it's amazing the types of changes you can make in your own organization to make it easier for people. And we try and do that every day.
Well, that's fantastic. There's definitely, when you can remove those barriers, and it kind of helps people to get, just to feel more comfortable to go and I'll speak for Urban Yeg's perspective that just briefly here that there's a couple of people that have. Well, I'm going to speak on just two members of our team. So Jeff has had personal experience going to Momentum. Another person on our team within the last couple of months, he said that he's been to Momentum, and he said that just the one session he found it to be very insightful, and he had a very positive experience. And then there's been other community members from Urban Yeg that I've seen through like their Instagram stories, just saying it publicly that they've been to Momentum and they've had a positive experience. So
that's great.
I think that and to me, that's a special thing that we've been able to, like, so from Urban Yeg, our perspective, that we've helped out these folks just in mentioning that Momentum exists. So like, I guess the way to put it is like, I feel like we're closer to the Urban Yeg community than Momentum is. So we're kind of that bridge.
Yeah.
And I think
it's so nice that you have that resource that you can suggest to people.
Yeah.
Good for you for
us,
doing
we
that.
feel great that just because for us, we're not trained therapists, and we don't want.
You're excellent listeners, right?
Right. We're not trained therapists. That we're and that's not our place to be helping these folks, because we're not trained in that way. But if we can refer them and pass them along and let them know that the folks at the therapists at Momentum, they can help you, and then these individuals from the Urban Yeg community, they actually go out and seek the help, and they do have a positive experience, then we can feel good knowing that was kind of our part in helping to make that happen.
That's so great.
And I just want to share with you, there was one incident that I can cite. This was in September of last year. We had an Instameet, and one of the community members who shows up to quite a few of our Instameets, she showed up, and she looked okay, and just as she normally does. And afterwards, after the event, she messaged us and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm sorry for if I felt like I was off this evening." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" She said, "Well, I just haven't been feeling really good lately." And she confided in me that she had some things going on in her life, and she asked me. She said, "Hey, do you recommend going to Momentum?" And I said, "Hey, you know what? It's worth a try if you feel like you're in a place that you need to speak to someone, and whether or not if you think that you need the support, you should go, right?" And to me, there's just that moment of her messaging us and asking us for our opinion, if and also confiding in us. I think that's really special.
It's hugely courageous too. Yeah,
absolutely. And just it's special to me because that tells me that what we're doing at Urban Yeg is we've got the right approach. We're doing the right thing. We're not, we're advocating for mental health, and but we're not like pushing for it. And if people feel comfortable enough to come speak to us about it, then it tells us that we're doing the right thing. And we want people, we want people to continue doing that. And we're here to listen and to support, but we're also here to help you out in any way that we can. So if it's going to Momentum, great.
And I think you really hit on something interesting, is that the other reason people say they aren't sure when or if they should go to therapy is they're not sure if their issue is bad enough. And what's so interesting to me is that most people that come to our organization come for relationship issues. It's not chronic mental health. It's not, I'm the worst I've ever been. It's been, I'm going through a life change, and, I'm not really happy and I don't know what to do about it. So you don't have to be the worst you've ever been to come and talk to somebody. You can just be in a place where you're not sure where to turn or what to do, and you just feel like you need to bounce ideas off of someone. That's what we're here for. That's the majority of our cases. But we also can help people who are in dire straits too. But don't think that that's the only time you can come, because you can come anytime. And what's great about that is then you address the issue before it does get worse. So work us out of a job, people. Come before it gets worse.
So Is there any plans for you guys to like open up more clinics?
That's a great question. People have been asking us that since day one.
Is that
you know
right?
what? I think what we find is that most of our clients come from kind of the surrounding downtown core. So like the Ring Road type thing. We don't find we get a lot of clients from downtown, only about 4%. And
really?
What's interesting is because I think there are just so many services downtown already.
I see.
So we're happy to be helping the people who are kind of in the surrounding communities, and we're super easy to get to.
Right.
So at the moment, there's no plans. We have just expanded. So
Right,
we've got lots
right.
of capacity. We're just on Gateway Boulevard and basically White Mud Drive. So like people coming from all over the city, it's super easy to get to us. So for now, but you know, we do want to expand our services to involve more telephone and Skype services.
I
So
see.
just so we can hit like northern communities too.
That would be good.
I
Skype
think that
and
would be really
things.
important because those communities are sorely underserved right now.
No doubt.
They just can't travel to us.
Wow.
So
Crazy.
that's our future goal, 5-year plan.
Very cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to address while you're here?
No, I think you guys hit on all the major things. And I just really appreciate you inviting me down and supporting us over the years because, you know, the fundraising that you guys do really help us to be able to help the clients that can't afford to pay for counseling. And that's almost 90% of our clients.
Is that right?
So, yeah.
Do you guys get any kind of like government help in that regard?
Yeah, we get a little bit of City of Edmonton funding
I see.
and the government of Alberta, like the provincial government. We get a little bit there too.
Okay.
But we do find about 40% of our revenue needs to come from fundraising. So
I see.
we do that as well.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we're behind you.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
Anything that we can do, and we always make sure to let our community know that we're working with you. And why we're working together, why it's so important to us. It's important to me personally, but I think having conversations like this are hugely beneficial for other people. And if there's anybody who is able to, like anybody who listens to this and goes, you know what, well, maybe that would help me as well. Then,
Yeah, absolutely.
Then even if it's just one person, then that's plenty.
That's great.
You know, through the events that we do in the future, then you guys are our focus. So
yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks so much, Kim. Thank you. All right, thanks for listening to the Urban Egg podcast. This is podcast number 2. Thanks a lot. If you want to join in the conversation, if you have anything to say, you can always follow us on Instagram. We're on Facebook at urbanyeg, and you can visit our website at www.urbanyeg.ca. We will have the podcast up on all kinds of platforms, such as like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the majority of the major podcast platform, you'll be able to find us there. So if you're hearing this on some platform and you want to use it on another platform, you can go and find it there, and you can go back and listen to the first podcast that we did between Shan and myself. So thanks a lot, and look forward to the next one. Thanks.